Hello, hello, hello. Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Coffee and Collaborations. I am your host, Kimberly Winborn.
And I am your co-host, Al the Great, CEO of Good Steward Apparel and lead designer.
Awesome. Make sure you go and check out Al the Great on Friday for TGIF, right back here at 9 p.m. We want to go ahead and dive into the conversation this evening. So make sure I got my late night coffee because I got a few things to do this evening. So grab your coffee, your tea, your water, whatever it is that you need to wind down, enjoying the conversation. Please share. Please share with a friend, with your network. And when you share, if you could just put hashtag share in the comments so we can thank you and we can know who's sharing. So please share. This is an important conversation. This month, October, is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, as well as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And Al, what is it? A couple weeks ago, we did awareness for September, which was a lot of recognition, more so in the health arena. So
Yeah,
thank you, Beth. What is your experience with breast cancer awareness or domestic violence awareness?
so a lot of people don't know this, but when I talk about my story growing up in shelters, a good amount of those shelters were like domestic violence kind of shelters, where me and my mom would be there, and some of them are homeless shelters, but I grew up around women. They're called battered women shelters, but I grew up in that environment for a good portion of my life, in various cities. So I'm definitely familiar with that life, that, being kind of in that situation, that culture. Like it's heartbreaking to me. It's definitely one of my, how everyone has one of those things where it's just, those things are just really near and dear to your heart. And that's one of them to me. Like to see anyone abusing anybody, but definitely, a man abusing his wife or his girlfriend, like it's just one of those things that I just cannot tolerate. I just can't even see it.
Right. And on that, feedback. Can you mute out your mic real quick just to see where that's coming from?
Okay.
I hear some feedback. But I'm with you on that. And one of the things that happened to me personally is that I had repressed a lot of memories, and a lot of children have that same sort of scenario. There's so many things that we are exposed to as youth that we repress. We don't remember. And then at some point in our lives, whether it's prayer or experiences or whatever, we hone in on that thing. And that's what happened for me. I had repressed some memories of things that had happened when I was like 2 years old. And that is the reason why domestic violence awareness, fighting against domestic violence, helping to get the message out that we have to all be a voice and, stand up for the victims and all of that. That is the reason why I am such an advocate to fight for that. And so I'll share my story in just a minute, but I want to first, thank you for sharing yours, Al. I want to first state the history of the domestic violence awareness. It was first observed in 1981. So in October of 1981 as the National Day of Unity. Domestic Violence Awareness Month is actually held each October as a way to unite advocates across the nation in their efforts to end domestic violence. Now, the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence has a number of statistics. Some you may be surprised about, some you may not. Domestic violence is something that is global. Number one, it's not isolated to the United States. Same thing with breast cancer. We're going to talk a little bit about domestic violence tonight. And then we're going to have another segment, if we don't finish, where we talk more about breast cancer awareness. So these are both awareness months, both epidemics that plague our families, that plague our lives. And so On average, I'm going to read a few stats. On average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the US. During 1 year, this equates to more than 10 million women and men. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men. Listen to that number, y'all. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience severe intimate partner physical violence, intimate partner contact sexual violence, and or intimate partner stalking, with impacts such as injury, fearfulness, post-traumatic stress disorder, use of victim services, contraction of sexually transmitted diseases. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. So where we hear all the time that, it's something that plagues women, it actually is something that it plagues the male population as well. Out of 1 in 3 women, there are 1 in 4 men that have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. This includes slapping, shoving, pushing. In some cases, might not be considered domestic violence, but it's still some sort of intimate physical contact, right? 1 in 7 women and 1 in 25 men have been injured by an intimate partner. Oh my. 1 in 10 women have been raped by an intimate partner. The data for men is unavailable. You guys know why, right? You know why? Because men
don't talk about it.
Yeah, they don't talk about it because they're embarrassed, right? They're embarrassed, and so that you're right, Al. They don't talk about it. So 1 in 10 women, and no data on the men, have been raped by an intimate partner. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical violence. That means like beating, burning, strangling by an intimate partner in their lifetime. 1 in 7 women and 1 in 8 men have been stalked by an intimate partner during their lifetime, to the point in which they felt very fearful or believed that they or someone close to them will be harmed or killed. Imagine living that. On a typical day, there are more than 20,000 phone calls placed to domestic violence hotlines nationwide. And we're going to provide that number because there are some signs and different things that you can pick up as an advocate and a friend to help your friend to get out of that situation. But there's also some signs that these people are in that situation, because not all the time are they going to tell you, right? Not all the time. Somebody said, what about same-sex domestic abuse? Yes, those numbers, the LGBTQ and those numbers, very similar to these numbers. Same-sex domestic abuse is happening quite a bit. The presence of a gun in a domestic violence situation increases the risk of homicide by 500%. Intimate partner violence accounts for 15% of all violent crime. Women between the ages of 18 to 24 are most commonly abused by an intimate partner. But let me go back a second. Intimate partner violence accounts for 15% of all violent crime. That is a pretty big number. 19% of domestic violence involves a weapon. And you saw that above that it said that increases the risk of homicide by 500%. And domestic victimization is correlated with a higher rate of depression and suicidal behavior. Only 34% of people who are injured by intimate partners receive medical care for their injuries. Many people don't report it. So what about the numbers that aren't reported? And let's talk about COVID for a second. Al, you want to share the information about COVID? Because that's something we've been talking about a lot, and people have been praying about and very concerned about, like, were those numbers going to increase because we were self-isolated, we were quarantined. I want to go back up real quick to what Kimberly said. Domestic violence is verbal for men and women. Yeah, it's also verbal and physical, emotional, mental.
Yeah, there's so many different ways that it can, be associated with and how it can happen. And, during COVID, they said that they were average around 70 calls per week during the pandemic, and explained that the senior director of Interact in Raleigh. And this also said there were 100 to 120 calls per week of people just reaching out for just for systems. So we all know that, and someone also, I think, I don't know how this was in a conversation. I don't know if this is one on the show, but we were having a conversation about why was the liquor store an essential business.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things that they brought up is that is the way that some people cope, and if you close, and the thought behind it was, if you close up the liquor store, then that will probably increase domestic violence, and some of it also leads to domestic violence.
Yeah.
But if you just think about like how some of these, how it's just like a house of cards, like how some of these things are just built on top of each other, it's just crazy.
Yeah. And so many people are abusive because of alcohol, while many people are able to manage their stress, or saying that they manage their stress by drinking. So I just want to go back up really quickly and talk about those COVID numbers. So ABC 11 reported, Interact is an organization that I supported for years prior to getting my own nonprofit. And they said that in the beginning of the pandemic, they were getting about 70 calls per week. And they were able to report after a few months. So in May, they reported, like Al stated, that had increased from 100 to 120 calls per week. Yes, Beth, everything has an effect. So I just want to go over really quickly some signs that someone is being abused, things that you can look up, note for. And this came from webmd.com. You can keep an eye out for things like excuses for injuries, personality changes like low self-esteem in someone who was always confident, constantly checking in with their partner, never having money on hand, overly worried about pleasing their partner, skipping out on work, school, or social outings for just no reason at all, wearing clothes that don't fit the season, like long sleeves in summer to cover bruises. No, it is not, Lauren. Alcohol is not a healthy coping mechanism for stress, but unfortunately, people tend to use it as, to them, a coping mechanism. But no, it's not. It actually incites a whole lot of issues. And so, yes, that's correct. I hope that that's not what you understood from us. But definitely,
no, yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, I definitely agree with your comment. Alcohol is not a healthy coping mechanism for stress. So for those who are experiencing this right now, it could be hard to decide whether to stay or whether you want to leave that situation. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, we're going to share that number. You can reach out to them. You want to make sure you call from a safe space or somewhere else where you can feel safe. And then I'm also going to put in the comments a note, signs that you may be experiencing abuse and you don't even know it. Like, sometimes we make so many excuses for people. We're so kind and we love them. And, sometimes we think that it's us and we're being ridiculous. Our standards are being too high or whatever. But these could be signs that you're actually experiencing the beginning stages of someone who is abusive. And so we're also going to share that. So thank you for sharing that, Al, those tips. And we're going to put this in the comments in just a second. But I wanted to share really, really quickly. So you guys see the Beauty 180 in the background, and then my t-shirt, Beauty 180. So Beauty 180 is my nonprofit. And like I said earlier, for years, I was trying to figure out, why was I so attached to this cause? Like, I'm always the friend that's like, you can come to my house. What do you need? I'm going to the store and delivering clothes and all of that. And I was like, this particular cause, because we're affected by so many different causes, right? But this particular one, I was just so passionate about. And that's when I started doing purple parties and, really raising money for these nonprofit organizations that support these women that are trying to get out of these situations, and men, right? And so I realized that I had repressed a memory, and I shared this when I launched the nonprofit last year. I had repressed a memory when I was about 18 months to 2 years, where I heard my mother being abused, and she wasn't being physically abused, but I didn't know. So I'm that little child. Have you ever seen a picture of a kid like just kind of crouched down with the parents like fussing in the background? So I was that kid. I would just hear banging and throwing and screaming and yelling. And I'm that little 2-year-old, 18-month-old on the other side of the door, fearing for my mother's life because I didn't know what was going to happen or what was happening on the other end. My brother was right beside me in many cases, being my protector, right? And we're, like I said, 18 months to 2 years old, and my brother was maybe 4. And he's trying to protect me. But that's a memory that I repressed. It happened over and over and over again. And at some point, my mom decided to leave that situation, that abusive situation, very emotionally and mentally abusive. And just, it wasn't physical in the sense of him hitting her, but just throwing things all the time, destroying things, us never knowing or feeling safe. And for a little kid, all we know is our parents, right? All we know is the people that we trust, our family and our friends that brought us into this world, our mother and my mother. I didn't know what was going to happen because I had never experienced that. And so I couldn't tell the story without, crying last year. But this year I could tell it because I've gotten a lot stronger. But that is the reason why this is such a big deal for me. This is why I started doing the mother-daughter events, because if you could train a child young to be strong and, understand their worth even the more, you can potentially prevent these situations. And I'm not saying that some people who have been confident and felt like they were worthy and, all of those different things cannot still be in this situation, but we can do all that we can on the front end to help people to avoid such situations and scenarios. So my heart is for women who are transitioning, because my mother was a woman in transition, right? 3 kids, 20 something years old, maybe 23, all by herself, thinking that we have family to go back to. But in that situation, how alone did she feel? I know how scared I was as a 2-year-old, 18-month 2-year-old. How long did she feel with 3 kids trying to make it? So my heart is for women in transition. And that's what Beauty 180, my nonprofit, is all about. Helping women who are in transition, whether homeless, whether coming out of prison, whether in situations of domestic violence. You guys don't know how many people, since I began doing the work, how many people reached out to me because they just needed somebody on the other line, because sometimes you're afraid to even tell your family. So you need people that will support you without judging or whatever, or without you feeling that they are. So Beauty 180 is my nonprofit. And so I wanted to share my story. I don't really share it, a whole lot, but I wanted to share my story, and I want to share it more and more. Let me see. Yes, instilling those values at a young age would make a huge difference. Lauren Walker, keep telling your story. Each time it will help you and help someone. Thank you. I will. Intimidation is a core junction of domestic violence. Yes. And so many of you have a story. You have a childhood trauma. You guys know how trauma really affects you throughout your lives. So many of us need therapy because of those childhood traumas, and it's okay. It is okay. But one of the things that really made me open my eyes is I was doing a Beauty 180 event coming up, which I raise money and then give to a nonprofit that supports this cause, right? This awareness. And one of my dear friends who had been supporting me for years, every event he would always donate money. And he was like, when are you going to have a male panel, or, a panel of people who were affected? So they weren't actually abused and they never abused, but they were the child in the corner. They were the child in the other room, like I was. And that him saying that really opened my eyes and sparked that road to uncovering those repressed memories. So maybe it's you. Maybe it's you haven't thought about your children and what they could be experiencing, And so that's why this is so important to us. So wanted to share my story. I said it fast because I know we have the vice presidential debate coming up, and we want to be sure to be responsible and be finished before so that we can go into that. But yes, I'll keep telling my story, and you guys keep telling your story. If you have a story that is, something that you've been troubling with, and you just don't want to share it, be like,
I think that would be great to have, like, something for people who are affected, because like I said before, I was one of those kids. I grew up with women in transition. I've seen the effects of intimidation, and some of these, a lot of us, when we were in these places, we were going to a whole nother city. We were in a whole nother state from where we were originally from. And people were, the women and the children were still scared. All of us were still scared.
yeah.
So, I've also been one of those kids who tried to intervene when, the abuse was happening, and ended up getting abused myself. So,
That's right.
I definitely understand what you're saying. Like, it's, there is so much, looking back, there are so many things that I see how it affected me today. Even when you have some people, you ever have some people who don't like quiet, like they like to have background noise, and sometimes it can be from that. Yeah, when there's a quiet moment, there's sometimes something happening, or some fighting or something like that. So it is a lot of things that can come of that, and I definitely think therapy is important. And please, people, watch out for the signs. Help other people. Sometimes I know a lot of people kind of have this idea you just need to get away from them. Sometimes most of the time, it's just not that easy. It's a lot of intimidation. I think, like somebody mentioned before, there's a lot of intimidation that is involved. And that intimidation can be pretty bad.
Yeah. And Beth said we don't realize how hard it is on our children. So, to your point, and, what I was talking about, is definitely something that we have to be aware. Many people stay because they think, I was talking with somebody else, they were sharing their story with me today. Many people stay in a situation because they think, this is better for the kids. Yeah. But in most cases, you just spoke about it, I just spoke about it. It's not. It's not the best situation for the children. And so there are so many resources for women who have children who have experienced such, where they can get counseling and all of that. Interact was one of those organizations that I work with, and my nonprofit Beauty 180 will focus on therapy as well. So I put in the comments the National Domestic Violence Hotline. If you know of someone that needs support and help, they can call that number. They can also reach out to my nonprofit, Beauty 180. We have a few resources where we can help them to get immediate attention and care. Right now, we are raising money and awareness and all of those things. So normally I don't come on the Coffee and Collaborations podcast and talk about much of anything that I do, but I'm really passionate about really sharing this. So please go to Beauty 180 Inc. on Facebook and Instagram. Share and follow that page, please. If you like to donate, I'd appreciate it. We're going to go into some extreme trauma training and different things like that to really staff up. And then also you can go to www.beauty180inc.org to find out more information. But that was our show for tonight. I want to make sure to put this link in the comments for those who may want to share with someone who doesn't really recognize or know and has a thought that these are the signs and they're being abused, but they're kind of turning a blind eye. I'm going to put that link in there that you can share with them. Al, did you want to close this out with any thoughts?
I just want to say thank you guys again for joining us for Coffee and Collaborations. And, to raise children, to really be responsible humans, it will take collaboration. And I think, this is one of the things in the last couple of years that has been on the table, that we need to be good humans. And it is important that we take care of each other because we are dependent on each other.
Yeah.
Things that we go through. It doesn't just affect that person or that family. It will trickle down to other people, because we are a community that interacts, that depends on each other, that you go to work with these people, your kids go to school with these kids, or they grow up, and all these things happen. Like Beth said, it takes a village, and we just really need to be good humans, and just really take care of each other.
Correct. And to that's a great segue to talk about the fact that the vice presidential debates are about to happen now. We got to get this information so we can get out here and vote for the right people to be in office. So we're going to go ahead and sign off. Remember that the coffee is optional, but the collaboration is absolutely essential. And like Al said, this particular subject, domestic violence, and helping people to get out of these situations is absolutely a collaborative effort. And yes, it does take a village. So we appreciate you for joining us this evening. You all have a great, great night.
Good night.